Good morning, everyone. This is Assemblywoman Petrie-Norris. Thank you so much for joining us for today's town hall. Today, we are going to be talking about the 2020 census. The 2020 census is happening right now, and it is so important for us to ensure a complete count in order to make sure that we get the resources that we need for our communities. So if you are watching at home and you haven't already completed the census, there is no time like the present. You can go to my2020census.gov and get started. It should take you about 10 minutes. It is safe and secure. And I'm so pleased today to be joined by two incredible panelists who are working tirelessly to ensure a complete count for California and for Orange County. We are joined today by Nancy Olivarez, the Senior Communications and Outreach Liaison at the Children's Partnership. Thank you, Nancy, for being here.
Thank you so much.
And we're also joined by Darlene Moreno, who is the Regional Census Campaign Manager for Orange County. Thank you for being here as well, Darlene.
Thank you so much for being here today.
Before we get started, would love just if you can take a couple of minutes, introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about your organizations and the work that you're doing.
Yeah, definitely. So thank you, Assemblywoman, and thank you so much for having us. Again, my name is Nancy Olivarez, and I'm the Senior Communications and Outreach Liaison at the Children's Partnership. And so at the Children's Partnership, we are a policy and advocacy nonprofit that focuses on child health and well-being. Our goal is to provide all children, no matter their background, with the resources and opportunities they need to thrive. Here in California, it is home to more than 9 million children, of which 3 and 4 are children of color, and half, roughly 4.5 million children live in immigrant families. So for us, having an accurate count of children in this 2020 census is crucial. Why? Because we know that the very programs that are critical to the health and well-being of children rely on these programs for their healthy development. And so right now until September 30th, we're doing everything that we can to ensure we have an accurate count of children.
Wonderful, thank you. Looking forward to hearing more about the work you're doing and some of the challenges that we're confronting and how we can help navigate through that. And Darlene, tell us a little bit about you and the work that you've been undertaking here in Orange County.
Sure, thank you so much for having me on today, Assemblymember Petrie-Norris. So I'm a Regional Census Campaign Manager here in Orange County for NALEO Educational Fund. And our work pretty much is to empower Latinos across the country to partake in the American political process. So our civic engagement branch, we empower Latinos to participate in naturalization, in voter engagement, and in the 2020 census. And we're doing this work with the census because Latinos are one of the largest undercounted populations. Here in Orange County, we have 15,000 Latino children ages 0 to 4 who were not counted in the last census. And that's why we're here today partnering with you to make sure everyone's counted.
Excellent. So as I said up front, the 2020 census, it's happening right now. So Darlene, just remind us, what are the deadlines? When is the census going to be complete?
Right, so the census deadline is September 30th. It's changed a couple of times this year because of COVID-19 and shifts in operations, but September 30th is the deadline to respond over the phone, online, and to have your questionnaire postmarked by September 30th if you have that with you.
Okay, so September 30th. So we're in the final stretch, in the final 4-week countdown right now. And Nancy, I want to start with you with this question. We've all said it's so important to ensure a complete count. Can you just give us a little more detail about why does this matter so much? Why is it so important that we count everyone? Oh, you're on mute. Yes. Good.
So Yes, so it's super important that we count all and have a really accurate count of all our populations, because the census determines how many representatives each state will have in Congress for the next 10 years. It also determines how much funding communities will receive, for instance, for roads, schools, housing. So it's really important because all the count that we receive during this time, it will ensure how much funding we get for really crucial programs, such as WIC, Medi-Cal, and in particular for us, again, it's really important that we get an accurate count of children, because children need these programs for their healthy development.
Darlene, anything you would add, anything that you would highlight just to drive home just how important it is for folks at home to be counted?
Sure. So the census is also extremely important to monitoring civil rights protections for groups across the country, right? And it's also really important right now as we're facing this pandemic with COVID-19, there's an allocation of resources, questions about how many vaccines are needed, et cetera. So because of that, it's so important to have an accurate count of the population.
And so we do this every year. So we do, every 10 years. Every 10 years we do the census. Darlene, when did we start doing the census in America?
So we've been doing the census, the decennial census, in 1790, every 10 years, right?
Okay.
Under the 14th Amendment, Article 1, Section 2, which was later added, every whole person should be counted.
And so I'm curious to know how the cities that I represent are doing right now. So I represent the 74th Assembly District, and that includes Laguna Beach, Laguna Woods, parts of Irvine, Costa Mesa, parts of Huntington Beach, and Newport Beach. Do you have updated stats on how those cities are doing right now?
I do, actually. So your cities are doing fairly well compared to others. So congratulations to your district. So cities like Costa Mesa, Huntington Beach, Irvine, and Laguna Woods have reached a response rate higher than what they had in 2010, which is incredible. But
that's great.
We still have to get, those last households counted. They're still in the 70s to early, or 80s percentage response rates, and we want to make sure they're at a 100% response rate. So those cities are doing fairly well. Cities like Newport Beach and Laguna Beach haven't yet reached their 2010 response rates, but I believe that's for one reason is that a lot of summer homes are in these locations.
Okay.
So people who have multiple homes, will not respond to the census more than once. So that could be a huge reason as to why the numbers in Newport Beach and Laguna Beach are lower than what we see in other cities. So it's nothing to be alarmed by. And then something else that we've noticed when looking at data in your region is that, places, and this is true for places across Orange County, places with a higher Latino population have lower response rates. So that's why it's so important to do outreach to these communities.
And so you mentioned that that communities that have a high percentage of Latino residents tend to be harder to count. Let's dig into that a little bit. So why is that, and what are some of the strategies that both of your groups are using in order to ensure a complete count, even in these areas where it can be harder to reach folks?
Right. So a couple of reasons why it's difficult to count Latino households. One, it could be low English language proficiency. It could be not knowing or having fear about the census, not sure about what the census is, why it's important. There are also very young children in these households, and there are families that are not sure whether to count a child or not, right? So I think that's why it's so important to do outreach with these communities. NALEO Educational Fund, we've been training organizations that have a lot of reach on the ground. We're equipping them with effective Latino messaging, things that resonate with the community, messages of empowerment, We're also making sure that they're aware that the census is safe and secure, and that there's no citizenship question. And that's what we've been doing on our end.
And you made an important point there. So you clarified that there is no citizenship question. I know that was the subject of some debate about a year ago, I think, before the census went out. But there is no citizenship question, which I think is good to clarify. And I want to pick up on one other thing that you said, which is just making sure that folks know that it is safe and secure to fill in the census. I know I've heard from some folks, not even from Latino parts of the community, but from some of our senior folks who have said, when people show up at my door and claim that they're a census worker, how do I know that I can trust them? Nancy, do you want to respond to that question?
Yeah, definitely. So right now, there's going to be the non-response follow-up. So there's going to be a lot of census workers going around neighborhoods, knocking on those doors from families who unfortunately have not participated in the census. And so one way to identify is that first, they are going to be wearing protective gear. They're going to be having their census badge. They have an official census badge that they'll show. When they knock at your door, they're going to ask for the folks that live there. They're going to say the address. And most importantly, one thing to take into account is that they'll never ask to go inside your house. Everything that they ask for is going to be filed in on the phone. So please make sure that you put in, that you see like their badge, that you see that everything looks official. They shouldn't ask any questions about credit cards or social security numbers. All they should ask is basic information about, how many people live in a household, the gender of those folks, and questions about race and age. But other than that, like if there's something that sounds a little bit suspicious, please, don't engage. But most importantly, ensure that you check their badge and that all the information they're filling out is on their cell phone.
Okay, so check for identification. It'll be getting filled in on a smartphone, and you'll never ever be asked for any kind of financial information or any kind of personal information that could be used to open a bank account or something like that.
Or social security, they will never ask.
Okay. And what should what should people do if they're concerned that someone's impersonating a census worker? Is there a phone number that folks can call, or a hotline that we can point them to? Darlene, maybe you can take that one.
So if anyone has concerns or questions about operations or census takers, NALEO Educational Fund does have a couple of resources. We have a hotline, 877-El-Censo, and we also have a disinformation/misinformation website and email address.
Okay, great. And how do census workers ensure that the information that they are getting stays safe and secure? What steps do you take with your team to make sure that that's happening?
Right, so under Title 13 of the US Code, census takers and Census Bureau workers are sworn in to protect all information, right? So that means that there are fines of up to $250,000 if they don't abide by these laws, and or up to 5 years in prison. So the information is very well protected. They're not allowed to share with anybody else, not allowed to share with, apartment managers or any other agency in the government. It is very well protected.
Okay, good. And what, in this era of COVID-19, where we are taking, such steps to ensure that we're practicing physical distancing, that we are doing everything we can to keep our community safe and secure, what additional steps have you and your teams had to take in the midst of this pandemic?
I could answer that. So
Great.
once the pandemic hit, I think for us, we definitely had to reimagine our whole strategy. So for the whole spring, we were trying to think of creative ways so that we could engage safely with our communities. So on our end, we partnered up and we supported a lot of these different car caravans that organizations were hosting in hard to count neighborhoods. So we participated in those, and at the beginning of the year, we had printed mass amounts of material that we were going to distribute. Given all events were canceled, we ensured that all that printed material we were sharing when we went to these car caravans, or whenever partners were hosting food distribution drives, we would also go around and, as families were making line in their cars, we would pass around our census material. But now that, we have shifted into this virtual environment, we've definitely reconnected back with our schools. We have a broad network of school partners, and so we're definitely leveraging those partnerships and going into now their virtual parent meetings and or their wellness workshops, or their chats with the librarian. Any congregation of parents that they have, we're tapping into those and just doing quick announcements, quick presentations on the importance of the census, and encouraging families to complete the census if they haven't done so, and also to remind, encouraging them to remind their own family members, their neighbors, their relatives to complete it as well.
That's great. So I think, yes, like all of us, we've all had to get virtual and get creative when it comes to reaching out and connecting and ensuring that we're getting this important message out. And I know both of you touched on the fact that sometimes it can be really hard to count children accurately. And so Nancy, I'm going to start with you on that. I guess, why is that?
Yeah, oftentimes it's because, there's numerous reasons, right? But first of all, it could be that a child lives in a really dense area. So it could be where it's a household with multi-generational families, multiple families living in one home. It could also be because the child lives with another relative that might not be their parent, and this could be like a grandparent, an aunt. It could also be because oftentimes parents don't know that they also have to include newborns, toddlers, and young children. They just aren't aware of that fact. So for us, one of our key messages, including all the other messages that we've been promoting in terms of encouraging families to complete the census, have also been stressing this fact of and making sure that they know that they should also include all children, even newborns, even if they're barely coming back home from the hospital, ensuring that all kids that live in their households are included.
And how much, just, in terms of putting this in perspective for us, how many children do you estimate were actually undercounted in 2010, for example?
Yeah, in the last decennial census, there was around 1 million children undercounted. And so for us, that's super crucial because children have historically been one of the hardest to count population groups, especially the 0 to 5 age group. So for us, ensuring that, this time around, this year, it doesn't happen, it has been crucial.
And the stakes really are so high. So Darlene, just again, kind of put into perspective for us, how much does California stand to lose if we're undercounted?
Right, so California relies on census data, right? So about $115.1 billion per year are allocated to California because of census data. So that is how much is at stake. And it's about $1.5 trillion yearly nationwide.
Wow. Okay. And I think Nancy, you started to mention this, but there's actually a role that our children have been able to play in ensuring that they're getting counted. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, well, for us, children are our future. So I think one of the key messages that has worked with us has been telling parents that if they don't participate, that's missing out on 10 years of funding for crucial programs. So 10 years, that's most of their childhood. So for us, doing messaging from the children's angle for parents has been crucial. Another thing is that with schools, teachers, principals, school administrators are among one of the most trusted messengers in our communities.
Mm-hmm.
So most often than not, if they hear this messaging about the census or any sort of messaging coming from the teacher who is a trusted messenger, parents are most likely to, absorb those messages. So for us, partnering again with schools that have like that direct connection to children has been crucial. And also ensuring a lot of partners have created, in addition to ours, have created all these different tools and toolkits that where they implement curriculums and the learning of children. So also ensuring that, teachers put that in their curriculums, teach that to children,
Mm-hmm.
because then children take those messages back to their parents. So those are just creative ways that, children have played a role.
And now I have a question. If someone's watching at home and maybe they filled in the census, but they didn't, actually include their children, for example, and they've realized that they've made a mistake, is there an opportunity to correct that right now, or is it too late? Darlene, what should folks do if they've realized, oh, oops, I filled it in, but I didn't count everybody?
Right, so it's never too late to respond to the census. If someone has already submitted their response, they can do it again by phone, online, or through mail if they happen to have the form. Because on the Census Bureau's end, they will deduplicate their responses.
Okay.
So if they have multiple responses from one household, they're going to take some of that information out so as not to count somebody again. So the problem that we have here is undercounting and not overcounting. Mm-hmm.
And so people can respond, you said, by mail if they still have their form. If you don't have your form, you can respond online, which is, once again, it's my2020census.gov. It takes, it says it takes 10 minutes. I think it took me about 5 minutes. It's, really straightforward, simple information. It's 100% safe and secure. And Darlene, you mentioned that people can also respond over the phone. Do you have that phone number handy? What is the phone number if people don't want to do it online and would prefer to do it on the phone?
Sure. If you prefer to do it over the phone, I actually don't have it in front of me. Give me one moment.
We will pull it up. Anything you would add, Nancy, while we're looking for the phone number?
So I would just say that the census is so important, so crucial for our communities, and ensuring that not only do we count our families and that we participate, but that we also include our children is beyond crucial. So within now until September 30th, we're going to work together with all of our partners, our community-based organizations, to continue driving that message. We are available to host presentations. If there's, principals, school administrators watching, feel free to connect with us, and we're happy to go and participate at your meetings and just hone in, because we need to work together in this last stretch to have the most accurate count of our communities.
That's great. Yeah, it sounds like you guys have done a tremendous job getting us to this point. But there's 4 weeks left, like you said, to make sure that we do get that complete count and that we bring these vital resources back home to our county. And for folks at home who want to respond but maybe don't want to do it online, the phone number to get started with is 844-330-2020. And if you look online at mycensus.gov, 2020.gov, they also have additional phone numbers where you can do a phone response in a number of different languages. So before we wrap up, Darlene, any parting thoughts for the folks at home?
I think during this time, I know times are difficult, and I just want to empower everyone to respond to the census, because this is one of the foundations for our democracy, right? This is how we say that we are here, that we count, and this is how we can ensure that our communities receive these essential resources for the next 10 years, and especially during these times.
Absolutely. So it's about being counted. It's about ensuring accurate representation and ensuring that we get resources back to our community. So important. If you haven't done it, get online at my2020census.gov or respond by phone. And thank you both again so much for joining us and for sharing your valuable perspective and for everything that you are doing to ensure that we get a complete count. To everyone at home, thank you so much for joining us. Be safe and be well. We'll see you next week.